Hello, everyone. I'm going to make an attempt at a story. Not really one that I've written, just one that I've come up with. Just no words down on paper or anywhere else to describe the full thing, except in blurbs and pieces that I've described to a friend of mine over the years. This is just going to be free form off the top of my head, so you're going to have to excuse any pauses and fumbles. And I hope you enjoy it. Once upon a time, there were monsters. Not with claws or fangs or any of the forms you might know. There was no fur or animalistic nature to them. They were people, but they were monsters. They, uh, they were part of a cult that worshipped the dead and those that controlled them. Specifically controlled, they had no interest in things like consent or kindness. And to that nature, they bred a necromancer. Now, the way of making a necromancer is very specific and had been done over many generations until a boy was born with the power to both see and control the dead. That boy's name was Elijah. Now, Elijah didn't ask for the life he was given, and he didn't want it, because the life he was given was a torturous one. They had worked for generations to create him. They didn't love him or care for him as anything more or less than head of a cult, a future deity, someone else to manipulate and to control. And their work wasn't done. The way you create a necromancer isn't just through selective breeding, through carefully curating parenthoods and lineages, not through 13th sons of 13th sons and 7th daughters of 7th daughters, though that does play a part. The real way to create the most powerful necromancer was to bring them as close to death as you could, as often as possible, without actually letting them cross that line. And to that end, Elijah suffered more than he should have, more than anyone should have, especially as a child. They very nearly broke him, and they came so close. One day they pushed things too far. See, they never counted on not being able to control him, and he snapped. Not in a way that would allow them to manipulate him without question out of fear, but out of pure rage for his lot in life and hatred for the ones around him. He left that village in ruins. He was the only one that survived. Well, one of the only ones. There was another, just not in any kind of living form, but as a ghost that would haunt him. Unfortunately, destroying his village had taken a toll. He was brought close to death again, but he was used to this, except this time there was no one to heal him. So he crawled his way through the forests into the desert, where he would be found by the most unlikely of people, heroes. And not heroes in the sense that they saved him, but heroes in the sense that in that world they were true heroes. Or rather, one was, and one was an up and coming. He had stumbled into a militaristic nation, and these people had actually been sent out to find him. They'd been warned about him by another who was created very similarly to him. When they found this broken, beaten, and pathetic form, so far out of their expectations of what they thought was going to be just an evil monster like the people of his own village, they couldn't bring themselves to harm him. So they protected him instead, and they healed him, and they grew close to him. They brought him back to the city where the hero lived and the up-and-comer was visiting. Him and the up-and-comer, a demon woman named Luna, and yes, I do mean demon, became friends. Now I say demon, but in this world, demons aren't evil. They held a natural hatred for humanity, but that's through their suffering. And Luna hadn't gone through that. It's learned, it's not innate. And it's not just humans they hate, it's all mortal races. Anyone that hasn't suffered below as they have. They became best friends. Luna saw him later on in her life as another little sibling to her. And she had several. She was the oldest of several children. And she took care of him. At least while they were together. The hero, not wanting to abandon this strange and potentially dangerous person in her eyes, and to an adoption center or streets, took him in and called him her son. And he grew up like that, grew close to them, but him and his mother would always be at odds. See, his mother was a military woman, as well as a hero. She was strict and could be callous sometimes. She was never cruel, but sometimes she wasn't sure how to respond to him because he was used to callousness and cruelty. He was used to discipline and walking on eggshells. So having to do that around her, even if she wasn't as nearly as bad as the others, in fact, she would be considered quite fair to a normal person such as you or I. It was difficult for him. His other parent was kind and loving and nurturing and everything that he needed, but the hero tended to outdo the other sometimes, and tended to make harsher decisions. They took him into the military, as was tradition in their culture. In their culture, every single person was conscripted, served a minimum of 5 years, and then they could choose to stay in the military. And many did. They were a militaristic nation. Fighting was their pride and joy. But Elijah didn't like to fight. He hated it, actually. He was physically weak, mentally weaker. emotionally weak. He was extremely intelligent, but the people who were in charge of him didn't value his intelligence. See, they knew what he was, and they valued control. And so he suffered some more, not as greatly, but unfairness. This got back to his mother. And he didn't fail, but he would leave, leaving his mother unsure of what to do until she remembered the up-and-comer that had been visiting during the time, and specifically remembering her father. See, the up-and-comer's father, also an adopted father, just as the mother was an adopted mother, was also a true hero, and one of the greatest that his country had ever seen. He didn't live in a militaristic nation. In fact, he was as far removed from the government as he could be. He lived in the middle of a densely populated forest of monsters and other beasts. In a clearing. I did say there'd be fumbles. Where him and his family, his children, the wife was usually elsewhere. Not unfaithful, just not home most of the time. She visited from time to time. But where him and his family lived, his children at least, she sent Elijah to them, hoping that he would be able to help him, not her. Well, I guess him and her. She needed help raising him, and she was aware enough to know that she wasn't good enough to do it all on her own. And John, the hero, agreed to help. So Elijah would spend time with that family. And it was good for him. I'm 13 minutes in now. I'll leave the part with John and his family for later. This is ending up longer than I meant it to, and I don't know, this is kind of fun.